Wealth, fame, power. Goldie Roger attained this and all the rest the world had to offer. He reached 100 million subscribers on YouTube. He beat Dark Souls in only 10 seconds, and he defeated Chuck Norris in ping pong. But his dying words were thus: "You want my treasure? You can have it. I left everything I own in one place. One place, yeah."
Okay, but where is it?
I just told you, one place.
Yeah, but, like, can you give us, like, an island or some coordinates?
Look, I can't walk your hand through it. I'm about to be executed. Just, I have all my treasure. It's in one place. Go and find it.
Seems like you're just kind of screwing us over here. I mean, what if nobody ever finds it?
Well, that's the point. Someone's gonna find it.
How do you know?
Because
Could you see the future?
I don't know, maybe? You know what? Okay, you know what? Let me draw you a map. Yo ho ho, me hearties, and welcome to the video to end all videos. This'll be the long-awaited discussion video on the king of the pirates himself, Goldie Roger.
I could try to grow an epic stash as Roger had, but it would just take it would take a millennium for me to get to that point, you know? Actually, you know what? Let's address that point first, you know, before we get into the character, the backstory, his influence on Monkey D. Luffy, who's the main character of the series. Let's talk about the most important aspect of Goldie Roger, his mustache, okay? So, no, I'm not even kidding, alright? This is a contentious point, alright? Many people will be quick to point out that Goldie Roger's mustache is in fact not a stash at all. It is in fact his nose hair. Yeah, that's right. Oda actually brought this up once, so we're doing like Bobo with it, which I'm cool. Bobo was an awesome anime. Back in the day, man. Saturday night, Toonami, sit down, you got some Naruto, you got some, you know, old school freaking Yu Yu Hakusho on there, probably, Dragon Ball at some point, and they threw in that Bobo crap, Mare was on, that was the time to be alive right there. But no, apparently, from what I understand, I had to do a lot of research into this, okay? I had to go into the lowest level of the Vatican secret archives to dig this up. But apparently what it is that Oda originally intended Roger's mustache to be his nose hair. Because that sounds funny. You know, that just sounds like, oh, he's the greatest pirate in the world, but he's got like this dorky appearance. He's got the hair coming out of his nose or whatever. Be like, that's funny. Fine. But from what I understand, that was just the original, you know, like, plan for Roger's character, and he's not actually going with that anymore. So yeah, his mustache is, as it exists right now in the series, yeah, just a normal mustache. Yeah, but as for Whitebeard, yeah, you could always interpret that another way. Whitebeard's mustache doesn't even look like a real mustache. Either he must, like, coat that with, like, Thompson's water seal on a daily basis. Other than that, it just looks like a piece of, like, white sheet metal that he just, like, rubber cemented to his face. Which, okay, or even worse, he, like, welded it to him. He just takes this piece of metal and just... I'm a real man now. Yeah. Okay, but now getting to the important parts of this. We're talking about Gold Roger, or rather Goldie Roger, who's the straw hat wearing pirate king. I have a crown up there. Yeah, this should be what he's wearing here. The only pirate to sail to the end of the Grand Line and make it out alive. The only pirate that knows the, well, I guess the other members of his crew. I guess I'm not giving them a lot of credit, too. Also, by the way, I had this shirt for about a year. It's, Rayleigh and Luffy, like Rick and Morty. I forgot to wear this in the Rayleigh video yesterday. I was kicking myself all night for that. No, I didn't let it go, seriously, because that would have been perfect. So, whereas it doesn't make as much sense right now, technically we will be addressing Rayleigh in this video because he's the right-hand man of Roger. I'm going to take this off now because Roger did not have a pirate hook. That would have been another way Oda to do it. Just like, this is the king of the pirates, Gold Roger, and just have Roger adhere to every pirate stereotype. Have him walk around with like 2 peg legs and 2 hooks for hands, and both of his eyes are covered with the eye patches and stuff. That's the true king of the pirates. I kind of want to see that now drawn. But Yeah. Okay, so we'll be addressing Rayleigh, of course, and also Luffy, because Luffy is, you know, the one that will be the current king of the pirates, that will be the successor to Roger. So yeah, but yeah, him and his crew found the One Piece, or took his treasure, which he called the One Piece. It's sort of vague, and then hid it on Raftel, and then eventually after that, the pirate crew disbanded. The Roger Pirates, or the Jolly Roger Pirates. When I was reading about this like years ago, I thought it was the Jolly Roger Pirates. I remember reading about that. And then later on, it was just the Roger Pirates, I think is their official name. But come on, the Jolly Roger Pirates, that makes sense. And it also, that's the whole reason why a pirate flag in the One Piece world is called a Jolly Roger, because of Roger himself. Cool. Also, Roger's base. I felt like I needed to throw that reference in there at some point, because we're going to be saying Roger a lot in this video. Okay. So I have compiled a comprehensive timeline of Roger. This is actually a little bit more complicated than I set it out to be, you know, because I originally thought, like, okay, Roger, you know, he's a badass, he gets his crew together, they sail into the Grand Line, they get to the end, they do the thing with the One Piece, either they find the One Piece or they create the One Piece, whatever, and then they leave, and then Roger turns himself into the Marines, and then he gets executed. There's a lot more stuff involved here, because the thing you gotta remember about Roger is that his famous journey where he conquers the Grand Line, that was his swan song. That was his final adventure. He had dozens, maybe even hundreds of adventures beforehand. Okay, and this was back in the day when the Grand Line was a lot more rough. Because looking at this timeline here, like, Roger's final journey from beginning to end to conquering the Grand Line, that took 3 years. Now, with Luffy and the crew right now, if you don't include the 2-year time skip, because the 2-year time skip, they were staying still on certain islands and just training up. That doesn't really count toward the actual adventure. They were putting the adventure on pause while they were just grinding, leveling up their characters, right? If you just add up all the time that the Straw Hats themselves have been journeying from the time they started the Grand Line at the Twin Capes all the way to the end, or where they're at right now at Wano, that's not probably more than a year. Probably only like 6-7 months at the beginning of the series, from the Twin Capes, from Reverse Mountain all the way to Edy. And then the 2-year time skip puts it on pause, and then it resumes later. It's only been, like, from the time they, you know, met back up at Edy to now at Wano, probably not more than a few months. So, that, I think, just tells you more about how dangerous the sea was back then. Alright, because now it's a little bit more habitable, and there's more people around, and of course the pirates are paving the way for the grand era of the Age of Pirates, right? So, yeah, but back then, yeah, it took Roger 3 years to get throughout the entirety of the Grand Line, so there you go. And I don't know, maybe Roger had a time skip too at some point, I don't know, but this was much later in his life. He was well into his late 40s when he did that final journey into the Grand Line, into his 50s. So, I would imagine, like, he was as powerful as he would be at that point. This was also around the time that he discovered his illness, so he's probably not even at his prime at that point, because his illness is taking him. So Roger conquered the Grand Line when he was in his early 50s and was suffering from an incurable disease. Roger's, that's just one of the many reasons, one of the 86 reasons, in fact, why Roger is a badass, okay? What are the other 85? I can't quite remember what all the reasons why Roger is a badass. You know, maybe you guys refresh my memory. Comment below the other reasons. Okay, but let's get into the timeline, all right? Now, Oda doesn't do years, so I'm going to have to do this relative to the current storyline, all right? So we're going to include this right where we are right now at Wano, post time skip, okay? So, for instance, Roger was executed 24 years before the current storyline, okay? I know it was 22 years before the time skip, but we're just to not make it confusing, we're not doing that, all right? So from the current storyline relative, we're going to be talking about this. Okay, 77 years ago, Roger was born. And he was 0 years old. Okay, so far so good, 77 years ago. Rayleigh is actually 1 year older than him. He was born 78 years ago. Crocus is a little younger. I believe he was born 76 or 75 years ago. Okay, so 77 years ago, Roger was born. Now, we do not know the story behind how old he was when he started the crew. Oda's probably going to have a whole flashback arc involving Roger. We're probably going to get to see Roger as a little kid, what inspired him, because we all know, like, the pirates nowadays, they grow up being inspired by Roger. Well, who inspired Roger? Maybe it could have been the Rocks crew. Maybe. It depends on how like, long the Rocks crew were rulers of the seas, because the Rocks crew disbanded about 40-something years ago. That was right around the time Shocky stopped being a pirate, so it was around 40 years ago. That's when the Rocks crew disbanded. But when did they start their operations? Okay, maybe they started way before that. Maybe it was like 80 years ago. The Rocks crew got their start, and so Roger was born 77 years ago. By the time Roger would have been a teenager, that might have been the inspiration there. And it actually calls back to some real world things, because the pirate Blackbeard was like about 15 years old. The real life pirate Edward Thatch Blackbeard was inspired by Henry Avery, the real life king of the pirates, which, watch my video on that, on Henry Avery. Yeah, that was like he was a teenager when Henry Avery had his big haul and he became the most successful pirate. So maybe it might have been something like that. But we don't know if Roger started his crew when he was like 17, like Luffy, when he was a teenager, or when he was a little older. The only thing we have to go on here is 52 years ago, when Brook and Yorkie arrived at the Twin Capes and they were setting out into the Grand Line for their journey. At that time, 52 years ago, when Roger was only 25 years old, he was considered a rookie. Okay, there was a scene in Shocky's bar when they were bringing up Roger and Brook. Brook is a little out of touch. They probably had to bring him up to speed a little bit on current events, because he was isolated in a foggy ocean for 50 damn years. But it's like, they're bringing up Roger and everyone's losing their shit, and Brook's just off to the side just eating some rice and just like, Roger. You say his name's GOL Roger. Oh, yeah, I remember him. Yeah, he was like, some rookie pirate back in my day. I remember a few murmurings about him. So he was, a newcomer at that point. Now, he might have been referring to him as a rookie in the sense of like how like Kid and Drake and Hawkins and Luffy are considered super rookies or supernovas. I don't know, because the way Brook brought it up, he didn't bring him up like, oh, Roger, yeah, I remember him. He was making big moves back in my day. He didn't bring him up like that. Brook barely remembered who he was. So at age 25, I'm going to say Roger, that was probably around the time he began his pirate career. Maybe when he was 23, 24, something like that. But it was probably later than when Luffy started and when Ace started at 17. Because you'd figure right now Luffy's 19 years old, all the shit that he's accomplished, he's already a household name and considered the 5th emperor, for God's sake. Right? So you'd figure by the time Luffy is 25, he wouldn't just be like, oh yeah, Luffy, I heard one or two things about that guy. Doesn't he wear like a bowler hat or something? No, by age 25, if things keep going the way they're going, Luffy's probably already going to be king of the pirates and everyone's going to know about his name. So yeah, I'm going to say this scene right here where Roger meets Rayleigh on the ship that Rayleigh stole because his house burned down, because Rayleigh's a stand-up fella. He's like, well, I'm already a criminal, so might as well be a pirate, go all the way. Screw it. Hop aboard, you strange straw hat wearing man. I don't know how that journey exactly began. I want to see, because we get the flashback of that, but there's more to that story probably, right? Like, I want to see, like, Roger and Rayleigh's, like, what was their first adventure? You could have a whole spin-off manga just about that. And you know what? I'm introducing that right now. When One Piece eventually ends in, like, 2087 or whatever, when One Piece finally ends, would you guys rather have a sequel series like Boruto to Naruto where we follow the future generation, or would you rather go back in time and learn about stuff like Roger's adventure or before that? I would prefer the latter. I would prefer a prequel, because the sheer amount of delicious lore that Oda has built up and world building throughout his story, that would be way more interesting. If you know what, One Piece is over, just start from Roger's story from day one and then build it up. There's an entire 1,000-chapter manga for you right there if you do it right, you know? Like, there you go, right? So, okay, Oda, I'm sorry, Oda, we're gonna be working you until the end of time. It's kind of like George R.R. Martin. Everyone's like, oh man, George R.R. Martin is probably gonna die before he finishes, you know, Game of Thrones. And it's like, nah, we'll figure out a way to turn him into a robot. We'll save his brain. We gotta do something to finish this story, right? It's like, Oda, we wanna make a copy of your brain to program it into a computer so you could keep on writing even after you're gone. But, yeah. So what was the point of all this? The point of all of this was Roger, when he was 25, this was probably around that time period right there when he began his crew. He was in his mid-20s, okay, and then he started and became, like a little-known rookie in the world. You know, it's like, oh yeah, I know Roger, I heard about him, but he's not a big deal, though. Rocks was, like, the big deal back then, probably. This was 52 years ago during Brook's era, and so it might be possible even the Rocks crew might have been the crew that took out Brook with the poison weapons. Might be. Alright, so now we flash forward 10 years later. The next moment we get here, 42 years before the current storyline, this is when Shocky stopped being a pirate. So this is right around the time the Rocks crew disbanded. 42 years from the current storyline, okay? The reason this is relevant is because, of course, Rayleigh and Shocky, they know each other. They're married, basically. They're living together on Sabaody. In the last video I mentioned, you know, like, oh, they might have fought each other, you know, back when their crews were going up against each other. And somebody actually commented, and I was thinking, like, oh, man, do the timelines not sync up here, right? And they do. So 42 years ago, Roger would have been 35, and this was right around the time the Rocks crew was at their height, or they were about to disband. So yeah, you know, if Roger started his pirating crew at 25, and then the Rocks crew disbanded when he was 35, that's 10 years there where the Roger crew and the Rocks crew could have had, you know, interchanges back and forth, and they could have run into each other, and it's sort of like Rocks is like at the top of the mountain, like we're the best pirate crew around, but Roger is like slowly, not even slowly, he's like making waves really fast, you know, where it's like, oh man, you know, a few years ago, this Roger dude was nothing more than just a rookie nobody cared about, but it's only been a few years, and now he's getting to that level. He's getting to that point where he might actually be a threat, that kind of stuff. So that's the reason it's important. I can imagine within those 10 years, because Rayleigh was around the same age, and in those 10 years, Rayleigh would have been 26 to 36. They might have had interchanges with Shocky fighting each other, and that's maybe how they got to meet each other. And after the Rocks crew disbanded, and then later after the Roger crew disbanded, they found each other again and went off and lived in happy matrimony. I'm just going to keep doing this for a little bit until you get the joke. You got the joke? Okay, I'm still going to do it for a few more seconds just to kind of get it, you know, slammed in. Okay, cool. All right, so the next moment here, we cut 14 years into the future, 28 years ago. This was when Roger was 49 years old. This is when his final journey began. Okay, this is when he found out he had some sort of incurable disease. We still don't know what the disease was about. This is the time where they recruit Crocus into the crew, because remember, Crocus was not part of this crew at the very beginning. You know, the same thing with Inuarashi and Nekomamushi. They were part of Roger's crew at some point in the beginning, because if you look at this time scale, if we're just going to say Roger began his pirate career at age 25. We don't know that for certain. Might have been a little bit earlier than that. But let's just say he began his pirate career at age 25. This is already age 49. This is already 24 years later that he began his final epic journey, his swan song. That is 24 years filled with plenty of epic journeys where he's probably not just journeying the Grand Line, all the four seas, exploring the Red Line maybe, all over the world. All right, and so Nekomamushi and Inuarashi at some point there were part of the crew, though they were not part of this final journey. Odin was also present at one point. You know, I don't know how this worked. I'm assuming like they had their journey. Maybe they got to Wano and then Odin was recruited and then they left the New World and then went back to their epic journey, or maybe Odin was part of the final journey, he arrived there. I don't know. We just don't know. It's just, it's ambiguous here, but there's 24 years of epic adventures on the high seas. A lot of stuff could happen in that time frame, right? So, Crocus joins up. This is also I want to bring up a side note here, a little bit of a headcanon thing. So when I was talking about the West Blue a few weeks ago, I brought up Robin and Olvia, and if Robin's father was ever going to be revealed, because Oda made it a point to mention Robin's mom, Olvia. So, okay, if we're gonna find out who her mother is, I kind of want to find out who the father is, right? So I brought up Roger as a possible candidate for, are you the father? Here's a little bit of a problem with this in the time frame. It's not impossible, but the way I envisioned this was like, okay, Roger is out there journeying the Grand Line. Olvia leaves Ohara to go to the Grand Line to find out the secret of the Void Century and find the Rio poneglyphs. Totally possible. They might have bumped into each other at one point. Roger is, of course, a ladies' man. I mean, come on, any ladies out there, how could you resist the stash, right? And so they got together one night, and then she got pregnant with Robin. The problem with this is the same year that Roger went to journey the Grand Line for his final journey, this was the same year Nico Olvia left Ohara to go to the Grand Line. And the problem is, at this point, Robin was already born. Robin was 2 years old when Olvia left Ohara to journey. Now, like I said, this still isn't impossible. It's always possible that 2 years before this, that would have been when Roger was 47, 30 years before the current timeline, because Robin is 30. Roger and his crew could have landed at Ohara, and then met Olvia there, and then had Robin, and then he could have left. It's still possible, but just the way I was picturing it in my own head canon doesn't really follow up, because by the time Olvia left and went to the Grand Line on her own, Robin was already 2 years old at that point. So, there you go. Okay. Now, like I said earlier, this final journey takes 3 years. It starts when Roger is 49, and it ends when he is 52. So, the next year, when Roger is 50, this will be 27 years before the current storyline, the Battle of Edy War takes place. This is the epic battle we see in the Strong World special, him going up against Shiki and this huge fleet of pirates, and Roger just pulls out his sword and he's like, "Let's go, me hearties!" But yeah, they're staring off against Shiki's crew, Battle of Edy War, and Roger's just one ship, the Oro Jackson, and he's like, "Let's do this!" Now, they lucked out because this massive storm just came out of nowhere, and that's how Roger was able to get away, and Shiki suffered some losses. This was also the moment where he got the steering wheel lodged in his cranium, because One Piece, that makes sense, right? Oh, by the way, we're not talking about this in this video because it's such a new topic. It's a theory. It's not even really a discussion. It's a theory at that point. What's up with the giant polka-dotted Yoshi egg that's on the Oro Jackson? What's up with that damn thing? So, we'll be talking about that. I'm gonna do like a whole video on the Oro Jackson and talking about that egg, so don't worry about it. But yeah, apparently Roger was a fan of Yoshi's. He arrived at Yoshi's Island, and he wanted to bring back a souvenir. That's how it worked, right? Okay. But yeah, we'll be getting to that. Don't worry. So that's when the Battle of Edy War takes place. The following year, I'm sorry I keep looking down, but I just want to make sure I get all the numbers straight, because it's like a numbers game at this point. 26 years before the current storyline. This is when Roger was 51. This is 2 years into the journey. That is when he finds the road poneglyph at Zou. That's when he arrives at Zou, and he finds the first road poneglyph, and he figures out, I need to get all these road poneglyphs, I need to connect them together, and then I need to go and find the location at the middle, and which later turns out to be Raftel, but they probably didn't know it was Raftel at that point, you know, but that's when Roger saw the road poneglyph there, right? Okay, and then finally, 25 years ago, when Roger was 52, that is when the crew finally made it to Raftel Island and found the One Piece, or they... See, this is the thing. I think it's both. Throughout their entire journey, the Roger pirates gathered a tremendous amount of treasure. I'm pretty sure that's obvious. You know, they gathered a bunch of treasure. Maybe it might have been just gold doubloons, Krugerrands, matey. They might have just found those. They might have been gems. They might have been other kinds of treasure. Treasure that's not measured in just gold or silver or diamonds or whatever. So they had their own treasure, But when they landed on Raftel, they found other stuff too. They found, I'm sure, the last Rio poneglyph and the Secret of the Void Century. There might have been some other stuff on Raftel that was like trinkets left over from the Void Century that the Will of D clan might have left there. So I think when they made it there, Roger took all his treasure, mixed it in with that treasure, and it became, or it might be like the Knights of Templar National Treasure sort of thing, where it keeps getting added in each generation. More and more people add to the treasure haul until it's like this huge thing. It might have been something like that. So he took all his treasure, put it in Raftel with the rest of the stuff that was already there. They learned about the Void Century at that point, what the true history was, and then they left Raftel Island. So that's I think, and he's like, this is the One Piece. The One Piece is not just my treasure, but everything the world has to offer. Everything that maybe the D clan gathered together all those centuries ago. Like, this is the last bastion of the Void Century. This might be, and it's also possible that Raftel might have been that ancient kingdom. The ancient kingdom is Raftel, so that might be where, hey, you know what? Here's one final thing with Raftel. There might still be people living there. We assume we're gonna get to Raftel and there's gonna be, it's like a deserted island with nothing but like old catacombs and there's the One Piece, but there might be people still living on it. This is One Piece. Time travel's a thing. Anything could happen, really. But yeah, so 25 years ago, that's when that happened. Roger was 52. The following year, this is right around the time he disbands the crew. Everybody goes their separate ways. Crocus goes back to his lighthouse and his giant mountain of a whale. And then Rayleigh leaves, and then Roger eventually turns himself in. He's executed at Logtown at age 53, which is 24 years before the series, which kicks off the Great Pirate Era. He's up there on the scaffolding, and he tells his adoring audience, about the One Piece, and he's like, you want my treasure, you can have it, go find it, it's somewhere out there in the world. In the town square that day, you also had some up-and-coming pirates. You had Crocodile, Doflamingo, Moria was there, Shanks and Buggy were there, Dragon was there, plenty of other people I'm not remembering right now, but a lot of the people that are currently making huge waves in the world, like Crocodile was inspired to be a king of the pirates at that moment. And that's why he tried his damnedest to take out Whitebeard, and that didn't work, so he kind of settled on becoming a warlord and founding Baroque Works. And Moria got inspired there. He got his crew together. He went in the New World, got the shit kicked out of him by Kaido, and then so he decided to become a warlord. So all of this stuff, Roger was an impetus for all this. Even well after Roger was dead, and people were being born that never even knew about Roger, like Luffy. Luffy was never alive while Roger was alive, but he heard the story, and through Shanks, his will was carried on, and, Luffy learned all about Roger, and he wanted to be the king and follow in his footsteps, and so there you go, because the king of the pirates is the one that has the most freedom. That's what it's all about, So Roger really did screw the world over. He really took that. That was one last middle finger against the world government, wasn't it? Wasn't that beautiful, where the world government's like, okay, all right, we caught him. I mean, he turned himself in, but we're not going to spin that to the world. We caught his ass. We're going to bring him out. We're going to take him to his hometown. He's like on home field advantage. We're going to execute this guy, this bastard who did all of this stuff. And it's going to be a message to the world. A message that the Marines are the ones that are really in charge. You better behave, because the world government, we managed to capture even the Pirate King. Roger's up there on the scaffolding, and in the anime, I think there's a few different renditions of Roger's execution. In early One Piece, in the anime at Logtown, it's depicted as like a super hot, like scorching day, and you get to see Smoker as a little kid witnessing Roger walk to the execution, and Roger kind of looks down at Smoker. That didn't happen in the manga. We don't get to see young little chibi Smoker, smoking his first cigarette at the age of 12, in the Times Square. We don't see Times Square, Town Square. We don't get to see that in the manga. So that's one version of it. That's a version where he walks up on the scaffolding and is like, hey guys, how you doing? And the executioners are like, do you have any last words? And Roger's like, could you loosen these cuffs, please? They're starting to chafe something fierce. And the executioners are like, we can't do that. I'm like, whatever. It's not like I'm going to go anywhere. So Roger just kind of plops himself down on the scaffolding. He's like, well, let's just get this over with. It's also really funny in the anime version of this, because I'm pretty sure in the manga, I might be wrong here because there's so many different versions of this, but in the manga, I think Roger just himself says, you know, if you want my treasure, you can have it, mateys. He himself challenges the world. But in this anime adaptation, he doesn't say anything until some random dude in the audience, just some random civilian living in Logtown, is like, Pirate King, where'd you put your treasure? And Roger's like, oh, my treasure, you're interested in my treasure. He's like playing the audience. He's like, what do you guys want to know about? You want me to tell you my favorite recipe for cake? Oh, my treasure? You want to find out about my treasure? Okay, I guess that's what you really want to know about. All right, well, you can find it in One Piece, you know. But in the anime, it's hilarious, because it's like, if it wasn't for that one random dude in the audience, would he have ever said it, you know? But anyway, so Roger gets executed, final middle finger to the world government, and it does the exact opposite of what they intended. It does not quell the pirates. It lights that fire. It nukes it up. It's like... And everybody and his mother starts like, I'm gonna start a pirate crew, Edith! That one guy in the audience, you know the Marines didn't let him live for very long. They're like, find that asshole. All I did was ask a question, man. I'm like, yeah, you did, but... Okay, guys, moving on with the execution lineup for today, we have Joe, son of a bitch, asks too many questions, 6-pack, up here, you know, okay. But, yeah, alright. So, around this point, the world gets thrust into chaos. Of course, you got the Yonko that were already established, like Whitebeard, Kaido, Big Mom. They were already well-known at this point. We even know that Roger got one up on Big Mom and, you know, stealing her road poneglyph at one point. That wasn't an innuendo. I didn't want that to take... That kind of sounded vaguely sexual there, like Roger got one up on Big Mom. Yeah, no. He got a road poneglyph and skipped out. But yeah, like Whitebeard, Kaido, Big Mom, they were already rulers of the ocean at this point. They were already well-known pirates. But when you had other, and Shiki as well, but Shiki was captured and put into, you know, impelled down at this point. But you had all these other pirates. Every random person decided, I'm gonna be a pirate. I'm gonna set sail. And it really just, I mean, there were pirate problems before this, obviously, like Yorkie and Brook, but this is the thing that really started it all, right? And of course, then we get to the present storyline with Luffy being inspired by Shanks. Okay, so that's the story of Roger in a nutshell, but there's still some stuff to talk about here. Last video, we talked about how badass Rayleigh was. And Rayleigh is a badass, okay? Like, you can't even look at him without considering that. I mean, the dude's pushing 80 years old. He can just, like, slap a giant elephant away. He can go toe-to-toe with a damn admiral. In his old age, you know, he could still compete with an admiral. He could do all of that, so the question is, how strong was Roger? That's the terrifying thing. When you find out Rayleigh and everything that we talked about, he was just the second in command. It's sort of like that scene in Whiskey Peak, when Zoro was going around slaughtering all of the Baroque Works bounty hunters, and Igaram gets to he realizes, like, oh, wait, the Marines must have put the wrong person on the poster. This is the guy. Zoro, he must be the true captain of this crew, not Luffy. Kind of the same thing with Rayleigh. Like, you see all the stuff Rayleigh's doing, it's like, wait, is he the captain or is he the first mate? Because, you know? So, did Roger have a devil fruit? That's, I think, the question a lot of people bring up. I don't want him to. I want Roger to have some, like, he had the voices of all things. If that had battle applications, maybe it did, but that was more of just like a supplemental thing, right? We've seen him use a sword, like a cutlass during Edy War. He drew a sword. We saw him use some guns, like regular pirates, like, you know, like traditional pirates. They would carry a bunch of flintlocks in them because you couldn't reload fast. So it'd be like every time you need a new bullet, you just pull out a new gun, you know. So that's what Roger kind of had going on for him there. I like to think that if Roger actually had a devil fruit, that would be common knowledge throughout the world. Alright, like, it's common knowledge that Rayleigh is a swordsman and his title is the Dark King. Now, obviously Luffy might not know about it because Luffy's so oblivious to everything, but when the Straw Hats all met Rayleigh, like Sanji, Usopp, everybody knew, Nami, everybody knew that's the Dark King Rayleigh. Everybody knew his name except for, like, Luffy, because, you know, he's Luffy. And Brook, obviously, because he was, you know, he was isolated. He had an excuse. But if Roger had the ability to, like, the Gura Gura no Mi, like Eneru's fruit, where he could summon lightning bolts, like, people would be talking about that to the end of time. Yeah, Roger, King of the Pirates, it said that with one twirl of his mighty stash, he brought down divine punishment. You know, if he could breathe fire, or control the wind, or summon mountains, or he could do any of that crap, it would be so infused in the lore. It would be, like, well known. Like, you'd see pictures of Roger, like, breathing fire or something, you know? So, I like to think it like that, you know? It would be well known. Luffy would be oblivious to it, but somebody would be bound to bring it up at some point. Somebody the Straw Hats met would have mentioned, oh yeah, by the by, Roger had a devil fruit and it could do this. That's the reason why I debunked that theory, like, Roger had the Gumu Gumu no Mi before Luffy did. Because if he had it, somebody would have brought it up. Rayleigh would have mentioned it. In the 2 years they were training on Ruskaina, Rayleigh would have brought up, oh, by the way, Roger had the same devil fruit you did. Let me show you some pointers on how he used it. It would have gotten brought up at some point, you know? Or all the other people that met Roger at some point. Whitebeard knew Roger and fought with him. You think Whitebeard, when he met Luffy at Marineford and he saw Luffy bouncing around, Whitebeard would have been like, yeah, so he has the same fruit as Roger did. Interesting. And, you know, so you go watch that video. There's a bunch of other holes in that theory. You could go watch that here. But, yeah, so that's my problem with him having a devil fruit, okay? Same thing with Rayleigh. Like, if Rayleigh had a devil fruit, it would have been in the same thing. Like, people would be talking about the Dark King Rayleigh. By the way, he could control the wind, you know, something like that. But no, it's like Rayleigh is known as a badass swordsman, and that's all, and he has hockey, and that's it. You know, and he's the Dark King, which, however you want to get that epithet, you know, we talked about that in the last video. Okay, so Roger did have to have a way to fight against, because he went up against Big Mom, Whitebeard, Kaido probably at some point. I don't think it was ever confirmed Roger went up against Kaido, but it was confirmed he fought Whitebeard and Shiki and Big Mom. So, you know, Big Mom has the soul fruit. Whitebeard has the power to literally create earthquakes. Roger had to have something in his repertoire to counter those huge attacks. So, whether it had been, maybe he had just the super Conqueror's Haki, because he was the king, so he might have had, like, a level of Conqueror's Haki beyond Rayleigh, beyond anybody, where you could just imagine, like, he draws his sword, and it might have been, like, a normal cutlass, but you know how, like, when Luffy and Doflamingo were clashing, and Don Shinjao and Luffy were clashing, and the Conqueror's Haki was emanating off them like black lightning? It could have been something like that, where Roger just draws his cutlass, and, like, not even just his body, but, like, an entire, like, 30 feet around him just, boom, just erupts in, like, world-shattering, vortex-creating Conqueror's Haki. And then he could just jump and just, like, clash with Big Mom, clash with Whitebeard. Doesn't matter that Whitebeard, you know, Quake bubbles up his Bicento. They can just, bam, like, he's so freak show strong with his Haki that it can contend with even some of the strongest Logias and Paramecias in the entire world. Whitebeard's Gura Gura no Mi is the strongest Paramecia in the world. And Roger went up against that. So, yeah, that's the best way I can describe it. Either that, or Oda is going to give Roger some other ability, some new ability that nobody else has, something unique to Roger, and the people that can hear the voices of all things. Maybe Luffy might awaken it later just for, you know, like, passing the torch kind of sake. But no, man. No, I want to say it's like that because Roger had, like, the disposition of a king, and he just had so much strong Haki that it was unbelievable. It was like, you know, he could knock out anybody if he wanted to. Maybe he could do, like, projectiles with it. Screw it. You know, like, he could project his intimidation on an opponent and just boom, and they just knock him out that way. Or cause, like, concussive damage that way. You know, like a level that we've never even seen before. That's what Roger had. Other than that, he had a magic gun. That's it. Yeah, magic flintlock, because it's the flintlock that the Pirate King used. It's a magic bullet, and it finds its target and just obliterates them in one shot. It's kind of like, if you ever play Breath of the Wild, Link's like ancient arrows, like anything they hit just gets sucked into this magic vortex. Maybe it was something like that. I don't know. Maybe it was the mustache. I don't know. This is Oda we're talking about here. He might incorporate Roger's mustache, like he armament hockeys up his mustache and then grabs somebody and just, like impales them on his stash. I don't know. Oh, man. So he's also a member of the D clan, the Will of D, obviously. And this is something that goes all the way back, way before Roger's time. This is something that started during the Void Century, right? I like to think that the D clan, there were a lot of people part of it at once, and then when the D started getting passed down, there's like members of the D clan that are more of a fringe, and then there's like the true Ds, like what the original clan meant for it. Because you gotta figure, after 900 years, there's gonna be some deviations. Like, let's say, for instance, the D clan, they got together and they were like, we are going to oppose the world government. Our job is to make sure we get rid of the Tenryubito, we dethrone them. That's the goal of the Will of D. And if we can't succeed, maybe our children will. And if they can't, our children's children. And if they can't, children's children. Just keep going down the line. Somebody at some point is bound to break this cycle. And I think over the course of the centuries, it deviates. Look at Blackbeard. Blackbeard is a member of the D clan, and yeah, his ultimate goal is probably to destroy the world government, but it's much more of a chaotic evil, like, burn it all down kind of fire. Luffy and Roger were probably, and Dragon doesn't want to do that. Dragon wants to burn the whole Marijois down. He just wants to get rid of the Tenryubito. So it's like, there's the fringes, like, by any means necessary, just like a visceral hatred for the world government. But then there's the ones that are like maybe in line with more of what the original Will of D clan founders like meant, Oh man, I gotta tell you, we're kind of at the end of the video now, so I gotta tell you a story. I gotta tell you a trippy dream I had last night, alright? I know I go off on tangents a lot, but we're kind of at the end here. All right. This ties back in, all right? I had a nightmare last night where I was back in college. I'm sure everybody's had this dream at some point. It's the dream where you're back in college and you sit down at your seat and you get a test that you didn't study for. That's the final. I had one of those last night, and if you've never had one, they're horrifying. So I'm in a math class. Keep in mind, I had not taken, the last math class I have ever taken was in the fall of 2012. It's been over 6 years, because my major was communications. I wasn't in engineering, I didn't have to take advanced calculus or anything. I had to take the bare basic algebra courses I needed for my general studies, and that was it. Okay, so I'm in this class, they give me the test, and this dream was like in real time. It was like, it really felt like I was sitting here at my desk staring at this paper, this first question, for an hour. All right, in real time. And I'm like, I don't know the first question. I don't know the first question. And the first question, I woke up and I still remembered it. This was the question. It was an equation, and this is what it was. Yeah, so it was 4 over D times 6 equals S. That was the equation that my mind was like being fried about. And I'm sitting there thinking like, okay, I could do this. So the first thing I need to figure out is, what is the D? What is the D? I need to figure out how to divide. What is the D? What is the D? And I was thinking like, oh, it has to stand for diameter, right? Isn't that what D stands for? And on the top of the piece of paper, there was like a chart that let you know what each of the symbols meant, what each of the letters mean, but there were like 10 Ds. It was like, D stands for date, D stands for day, D stands for diameter, D stands for distance, and I'm like, which D is this D? They're all the same damn D! What is the D? And I eventually got to the point in the dream where I was like crying, and I like, the teacher was like, all right, time, the professor's like, hand in all your tests, I'm collecting them, and I'm like, looking at him, and I'm like, no, I'm not. He's like, oh, you probably didn't do as bad. I'm like, screw you, I didn't get one question right. I just ripped up the damn paper, threw it in the trash. I hope you guys had better dreams last night. I hope you guys had a dream where freaking Robin or Nami or Boa Hancock or somebody walks into your room and gives you some sexy fun time. And if you're a girl watching this, I hope that, I don't know, you know, Zoro or Sanji or whoever your male, you know, anime, you know, sexual desire is walked in all suave, like, hello there. I'm playing a lot of Persona 5 lately. Joker has it going on, right? But yeah, that was what I had to deal with last night. But okay, so that's Roger in a nutshell. I mean, I made a video on his entire crew. I'm gonna do videos about, I have to talk about Scopper Gabon at some point. I've also never made a solid video about, Crocus. I've mentioned him in a lot of videos, but I've never made a solid video about Crocus, so I should probably do that. Crocus is a pretty interesting character. Now, one last thing I want to discuss about Roger, and, I kind of hinted at it in the Rayleigh video. It's like, Luffy doesn't need to follow Roger's footsteps exactly. Alright, he doesn't need to follow it perfectly, because there's people like, oh, he's gonna get to Rafto and he might contract the same illness that Roger did, and then, you know, Chopper's gonna have to heal him and everything like that. He doesn't have to follow the same thing. You know, and I think that's also the reason why people wanted Roger to have the Gomu Gomu no Mi, how that theory began, because it's like, you know, oh, well, or why people still say to this day, those people that are convinced that Luffy is the son of Roger. I've read plenty of those, like, yeah, I know we learn about Ace, but I think that's bullshit. I think Luffy is the true son of Roger. They really want these connections, and I'm under the opinion that, are there connections between Luffy and Roger? Absolutely. But I think the way Oda's doing it is a little bit more symbolically. Not a familial blood tie, but like he's continuing on his dream, his journey, his spirit. That's what Luffy embodies. Alright, it doesn't need to be slammed over your head like, oh yeah, Luffy is the son of Roger and also has the same devil fruit that he did and is also going to follow the exact same journey he did and also contract the exact same disease he did. Doesn't need to be that, and I don't want it to be that. I don't want it. I want Luffy to have his own journey. Alright, and I'm sure there's plenty of things that have happened in Luffy's journey that didn't happen in Roger's. Or maybe at some point later on down the line, they're going to come to a point where they're going to find out about what Roger did, and Luffy decides to take a completely different path. Quite possibly. In fact, they kind of already did, because Roger, when he reached that last island, that's when he learned about the existence of the road poneglyphs and stuff. Alright? And so the Straw Hat crew, they don't have to do that, because they got to Zoe first, because Zoe does not have a log pose to it. Roger's crew just kept following the log pose until they eventually reached the last island. It's not Raftel, it's just some island, we don't know about it yet. That's when he found out about the road poneglyphs, and they had to double back, and they eventually arrived at Zoe, and found out about the road poneglyph, then to go to Big Mom, steal her road poneglyph. But the Straw Hats don't need to worry about that, because they got to Zoe by other means. So they already know about the existence of this. So they're already taking a different path than Roger did, right? I've also thrown out the idea, because, you know, Oda doesn't do this. Usually when characters die in One Piece, they stay dead. They don't come back. We'll see them in flashbacks, sure, but we don't get to see them, like, coming back as, like, spirits or anything. So, like I would never like to see Rayleigh, or, not Rayleigh. Well, that's setting myself up for something bad. Please don't die, Rayleigh. I would not like to see Ace show up as like a ghost, like a Jedi ghost of Ace, and be like, Luffy, use the Red Hawk, I believe in you. I wouldn't want Ace to do that. I wouldn't like to see, like, they arrive at the One Piece, and it's like a giant treasure room, and they open up the doors, and they see all this treasure, plus some valuable historical artifacts, and the true history. They find out about all this stuff, and then Roger appears as a damn ghost or something, like, way to go, me hearties. Now my ghost can rest in peace. Yo-ho-ho-ho. What was Roger's laughter style? Do we know his laughter style? I don't know if we do, because yo-ho-ho-ho, that's Brooks. Alright, so anyway, though, that's the Roger video that has been really wanted for years. I'm glad I finally got a chance to do this. There will be a video talking about the Oro Jackson and that giant egg and some other members of Roger's crew, but for right now, I think we're set. Tomorrow, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be talking about another badass. Name starts with the letter R. Rob Lucci. It's kind of funny when you just say his name's Rob. It's just Rob over there. Hey Rob, how you doing? She gone. Oh, okay, Rob, Mr. Lucci. All right. See you back here next time, guys. Then after that, we're talking about Rebecca. That's when shit's really gonna hit the fan. Yard.